Hi guys, welcome back to Ask Amy, down here where it's nice and festive. So I have a couple questions, related questions today that I want to read to you from Ilan, and they're actually from Ilan's wife via Ilan. So Ilan's wife, this is for you. So she says, I get the idea, be more calm and relaxed. I even see that I may have a choice of how calm or worried to feel. Okay. But if I don't let myself worry about all the things I have to do, how will I remember to do them? Isn't anxiety the natural way my common sense reminds me to take care of what's important? I love this question. I'm going to finish reading what she asked, but I can't wait to dive into this. So she says, for example, if I don't worry about cars running me over, why will I be careful crossing the road? If I don't get anxious about leaving the oven on, why will I remember to check it's off? If I don't worry about my kids' safety, what will prompt me to keep a close eye on them and teach them to take care? If I choose to be calm and feel that nothing is critical or important, maybe my performance and success will suffer. I'll neglect my work, won't rely as promptly to my boss, etc. As for all the people saying they had an insight and became calmer and happier, I'm glad they felt good, but how do I know it wasn't bad for their performance or their parenting? Maybe their children lack discipline and don't know how to stay safe. Okay, so this is a brilliant question. I love it. I think it's the kind of question that probably a lot of people kind of new to this understanding have and are afraid to ask. So thank you, Ilan's wife, for asking it, or having your husband ask it. I think it's just awesome and super helpful and super honest. You know, I mean, from a way of looking at this, especially kind of new to all this, these are really reasonable questions because this understanding goes against how we're so used to living our lives. And how we're so used to living our lives, in part, is feeling a lot of worry and anxiety and being really connected to those feelings as if they're helpful, and not just worry and anxiety. I mean, we're connected to all of our feelings as if they're ours, as if they mean something, as if they're helpful, as it, like, in the vein of, well, why would I be thinking this or feeling this if it doesn't have some useful information for me? So again, excellent, normal questions to start saying, oh wait, you're telling me that this stuff just shows up within me and it doesn't, it's not trying to tell me what I think it's trying to tell me, and it's not mine, and it isn't so always true. Like, of course, that sounds crazy in the beginning. So I love, again, that you just were really honest to ask these questions and to look more at this. So let me break it down. There's kind of two main questions in here. So the first piece is about if I don't let myself worry about all the things I have to do, how will I remember to do them? It's really, again, really easy to have worry and anxiety look like it's doing something for us. So like you said in the examples you give, what we recognize as human beings, what we experience is like, oh my gosh, did I leave the oven on? Oh no, I might have left the oven on. I better check and see if I left the oven on. So our mind's like, oven. Oh no, what would happen? What's going on? Our mind does all this. And when our mind does all that, almost every time, I bet, you go check the oven, right? So probably most of the time the oven's off. Ilan's wife, can you agree with that? Like, probably most of the time the oven's off, but maybe, hey, if even half the time, if even a tenth of the time the oven's on, you could easily make a case and say, oh, good thing I worried. I caught the oven on and I got to turn it off. Now, again, that looks logical. It looks like it makes sense, right? It looks like my worry and my anxiety preceded catching the oven on. Therefore, my worry and anxiety must be really helpful. They helped me realize that the oven might be on and they helped me catch it. That's one way to see it that makes perfect sense. But it's one teeny tiny, very skewed way of seeing it. You know the old thing, I've talked about this here before, of and I always butcher it too, so sorry I keep bringing it up, but of like, you're touching like one little part of the elephant and you just feel something kind of bristly, but you have no, like, I don't know, it's bristly, I have no context, like it could be anything. Well, it's the elephant's tail. And then you feel something kind of soft and you have no context of what you're touching. Is it velvet? Is it cotton? I don't know. No, it's an elephant's leg. So like without the whole picture, we just see or touch or remember, or our mind just jumps to one tiny little piece and it looks like it tells a story. And that's what's happening here is we feel anxious. We maybe sometimes, we tell our kids, don't you cross the road, look both ways before you cross the road, don't get hit by a car. And then we conclude, and this is where we're a little off or a lot off, and then we conclude my anxiety made me do it. My worry helped me. But what I want you, Ilan's wife, to start to kind of back up and see a little bit is that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like if you just go out in the world, most people are not going to equate worry and anxiety with common sense and wisdom and having an idea, like having a new thought, like realizing something. Worry and anxiety, and just try this out for yourself and see, for me, they have a very, very different feeling than that feeling of, I wonder if I left the oven on. Now, I wonder if I left the oven on, I have thoughts like that all the time. Again, check for yourself that aren't coming from worry and anxiety. That, maybe a bit of worry and anxiety comes in after. Like it occurs to me, oh, I forgot to email that person back. Or, oh my gosh, I think I have a call in 5 minutes and I lost track of time or whatever. And then, now again, I'm kind of making up the and then, but just kind of play it out my way for a minute. Maybe and then some feeling shows up, right? But it's a really, really, really different thing to see that than it is to say that worry and anxiety are helpful in and of themselves. They help you remember things. They don't. They don't. And they don't improve your memory. They don't improve your common sense. They don't improve your reaction time. They do just the opposite. Just the opposite. So I would say that if you're sitting around in worry and anxiety, you are far less likely to be aware that there's a car coming. You are far less likely to realize that you left the oven on, or any of the other examples that you gave, to be cautious about your kids. If you're in worry and anxiety, they take so much resources and they are all consuming. And they're not helpful. But it's very easy to mix that up and think that they were the thing that helped you because, they're kind of paired with remembering things sometimes. So you say, isn't anxiety the natural way? I love this. Isn't anxiety the natural way my common sense reminds me to take care of what's important? No. No, not at all. Anxiety's over here. Common sense is over here. Common sense is there within you all the time. If anything, and anxiety, so just see how this feels. Like put them on independent planes, on separate planes. Now this isn't, again, don't take this too literally, but something guides us and walks us through life, and it's full of what we might call intuition, wisdom, common sense, new ideas, natural protection when you talk about your children and keeping them safe and looking both ways when we cross the road. When we're just in our natural state without a lot on our minds, common sense and new thought and everything that's helpful and safe for us is right there because it is what we are. It's what we're made of. It is our essence. Like that's kind of our nature, right? It's our nature. Now, over and through our nature, on top of our nature, we have all kinds of thinking. And that's what anxiety is. So again, you can kind of imagine that I'm on two separate planes. We walk through life, we're guided through life. We don't make decisions. We don't decide, well, again, see what feels right for you. But the way I see it, we are not out there making all these decisions and pulling all these strings. It occurs to us to turn the oven off. Like we naturally see our head going both ways when we're at a busy street. I mean, like life lives us. Look for this, Ilan's wife. Like look for it in your own life, how life lives you. You don't have to get in there with your head and make every decision. Oh my God, we'd be a mess. We'd be a mess. So life is living you, and it's living you in the most safe, moving toward way, not a good way of saying it, but like evolving, growing, thriving way we can possibly imagine. And on an independent plane, again, not totally independent, but over here, we're thinking. And maybe you're thinking like just not much, and so common sense and wisdom and life guidance, they're just kind of leading the way, and you just got some nice little thoughts floating around. Now maybe you're thinking all kinds of heavy stuff and it looks really real and personal and you're identifying with it, and that's what anxiety is. All this heavy stuff, and we're all in that. Now your common sense and wisdom are still right there. They're still guiding you through life. Even in all this anxiety, if you have to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom, right? You don't have to decide it. It's just done through you. It's just how you move through life. But the anxiety and the worry and all of that, that's not fueling common sense. Just the opposite. If anything, I mean, not really just the opposite, because like I said, common sense and wisdom, they're going. The planets don't need us to keep spinning. We're not responsible for our own lives and all of our actions in life. So that's going either way. But if anything, I should say, anxiety and worry is just distracting us and weighing us down and making us less creative and less likely to remember that we left the oven on and less likely to pay attention, to a car coming at us. Like, it's when we have all this on our minds and all that heavy stuff and we're really caught up in it, when people say common sense and wisdom went out the window. So it's the exact opposite, Ilan's wife, I'm sorry I keep calling you that, as how it looks. It truly, truly is the exact opposite of how it looks in this case. And I hope it's helpful to kind of just sit with that and consider. Again, I'm telling you that as I see it, life is the complete opposite of how it appears. So that's okay. Like, you don't have to believe me and jump on board right away, but consider that it is separate and independent in that way. Anxiety is not, as you say it, the natural way my common sense reminds me to take care of what's important. Not even close. What anxiety is the natural way that we get alerted to the fact that we're caught up in a bunch of thinking that looks real. So we're worried and we're thinking about it and we're caught up in our heads. The feeling of anxiety is there to kind of show us, hey, you're caught up in your head. It's kind of the opposite. It's like, hey, you're really up in here. You might want to get back in life. It's a lot safer over there in life. You're going to do much better over here in life. You don't want to be over here in your ideas about life, your concepts about life. Get back in life. If anything, that's what anxiety, the feeling of anxiety, is there showing us. So again, the complete opposite of it being this safe, protective kind of thing. Not at all. The safest, most protected place we can be is here in the moment. Here in the moment, with thought just moving through us as it naturally does, as it's meant to do. So the second part of your question, all these people saying they had an insight and they became calmer and happier. I'm glad they felt good, but how do I know it wasn't bad for their performance or their parenting? Maybe their children lack discipline and don't know how to stay safe. Okay, so to me, what that is, I have this insight, nothing to worry about. Life is awesome. Yeah, kids, go play with those knives over there. I'm just hanging out. Like, everything's fine. Kind of, and I think that's what you mean. That's the feel I get from this question. Like, oh yeah, but maybe you got irresponsible. Maybe you stopped going to your job because you were so darn happy because you didn't have anxiety about it. Maybe you stopped watching your kids. That's like being stoned. That's not anything that I'm talking about. I know that feeling. I know that like, oh, everything's great, but you're oblivious. You're not, again, it's not being in the moment. It's not that safe in the moment in life kind of thing. It's like your mind has gone blank almost, the way you're describing it. Or again, I don't know, just the clearest example that comes to my mind is like if you're really stoned and you don't care about anything except like the cool light or the funny thing on TV or whatever you're fixated on. You have no sense of responsibility. You have no real, like, your common sense isn't really there in the way that we talk about responsibility isn't there. That's not what this understanding does. Not at all, actually. I don't know how to really, like, address that or convince. I don't want to convince you of it at all, but it's really just the opposite. Again, when we don't have all this worry and anxiety on our mind, we get better, not worse, at everything. Now, maybe you're not, maybe once people get kind of calm and relaxed and happy, they don't work 12-hour days just to make their boss happy. Like things like that for sure fall away because our common sense comes up and says, whoa, a thought was leading you into that, and that's not real. So we do things, again, that feel good and healthy, but we don't swing to this irresponsible kind of place. And the thing that occurs to me as I read this is to just ask you, who would you, so you're talking about like parenting and keeping our kids safe, just as one example, I understand, but who would you rather have watch your kids? Like if I was going to say, have a babysitter come to the house and watch my kids, and she was an anxious mess, and she's like fidgety and pacing and her mind's going a million miles an hour, I wouldn't leave. I bet you wouldn't either. I bet you anything. Someone who's calm and grounded and not checked out. I wouldn't leave them with a stoned person either. But we're talking about a middle ground here, like a gigantic middle ground. There's these two extremes, and it isn't anywhere in those extremes. It's really in the middle. Anxiety and worry does not lead to safety and common sense. And again, to check that for yourself, just think, okay, if you had a babysitter or a family member or a neighbor who was super anxious, super worried, would you feel comfortable leaving your children with them? I bet you wouldn't. Now, if you would, then, maybe those things do equal common sense, and that would make sense, but I bet you wouldn't. And when people come to see more about who we really are and how our experience works, we don't fall to that crazy extreme. We don't get stoned and lose all responsibility. I really, really, in my years in this, have seen the exact opposite. The exact opposite. We do what feels right to do. We don't do a bunch of crap out of guilt and out of fear in the same way, but we're extremely responsible in doing what feels right to do, and we do it with such higher quality and more creativity, and we're more productive in a way that really pays off because we're not just spinning our wheels in mental worry and thinking about stuff. So I hope this has been helpful. I've loved answering these questions. I love, again, just the really, really honest questions of someone that's just looking at this kind of new, saying, whoa, this is the opposite in many ways of everything I've ever thought about life and how it works. So I really appreciate you and your husband sending me these questions and giving me a chance to talk about them a little bit. And I hope it's helpful for you and anyone listening. So thanks, guys, for listening, and I'll see you next week.